Quotes from The Truth About Homosexuality by John F. Harvey. From John Mooney, In Primates. The influence of prenatal and neonatal hormonalization is more perceptible to subsequent superimposed variations in social communication and learning. There is no human evidence that prenatal hormonalization alone, independently of postnatal history, inexorably preordains either orientation. Rather, neonatal antecedents may facilitate a homosexual or bisexual orientation, provided the postnatal determinants in the social and communicational history are also facilitative. The discovery that a nucleus differs in size between heterosexual and homosexual men illustrates that sexual orientation in humans is amenable to study at a biological level. Further interpretation of the results of this study must be considered speculative. 69% of responding psychiatrists agreed that homosexuality is usually a pathological adaptation, as opposed to a normal variation. Diana Richardson goes on to point out that a few studies have shown that individuals may undergo one or more redefinitions of sexual identity during their lifetime. In short, the patient wants the clinician to label him, thus giving meaning to his fantasies and behavior. Richardson advises caution and prudence in labeling, because it is her conviction from research and practice that some people do change their sexual identities over time. She also believes that one may go in either direction, from homosexual to heterosexual, or the other way around. Diana Richardson adds that more recent research has also indicated that some individuals may undergo a change of sexual identity during their lives. Gerald van den Aardweg treated more than 200 homosexual men. He began with 101 persons in 1968, but 43 discontinued treatment after 2 to 8 months. Of the 58 who remained, 11 experienced radical change, 26 experienced satisfactory change. Again, the authors noted that the subjects who married did not experience an immediate disappearance of homosexual dreams, fantasies, and impulses, but as their marital relationships progressed in satisfactory manner, such dreams, fantasies, and impulses gradually diminished over time. If it is defined as fixed and immutable, then the chances for change are slim. If it is defined as changeable, then change can be viewed as possible. From Ismond Rosen. From his study and clinical practice, he understands the deep self-hatred of the homosexual person as coming from the traumas of his childhood, and not from society's disapproval of homosexual behavior. Payne Whitney Psychiatric Clinic and in the Department of Psychiatry of the Cornell U College of Medicine, adding that he has treated patients for periods ranging from 1 month to 15 years, from 3 to 375 hours, and from ages 16 to 65 he continues, I have also collected 2 to 15-year follow-ups on some patients. Of this group, 49 patients recovered, 19 partially recovered, 68 made progress, and 20 got married. Regarding Dr. William Concilio, the author gives sound advice to counselors as well, stressing the need for loving patients in guiding their counselees over a period of time, while delineating clearly the steps leading unconsciously to a homosexual orientation: low self-esteem, gender emptiness, gender, sexual attraction, homosexual reinforcement, and homosexual identity. Through Bob's journal, he illustrates these stages, asking the question, what do I have to do to change? Alluding to the truth that men and women, with the exception of Mary and Jesus Christ, are subject to unruly concupiscence, Concilio believes that homosexual temptation is not completely eradicated, although they can be reduced to the point where they are minimally bothersome. This effort to change internally must be in conjunction with efforts to change externally. The author suggests several personal changes. These include wearing gender-appropriate clothing, getting rid of all pornographic materials, and learning one's triggers and setups. Payne uses the inner healing movement, which in Satinover's judgment provides the clearest understanding of the relationship between faith and psychological process. Hence it is the most scientific, and yet it is firmly rooted in the charismatic renewal movement within the Church, embodying a distinctly ecstatic form of worship. In short, having studied the work of Leanne Payne, Dr. Satinover concludes that her method not only satisfies the highest standards of professional therapy, but also leads to real cure of the condition of homosexuality through an interaction of factors, one of which is the power of the Holy Spirit, an element one accepts on faith or not at all. The first study I present is that of David P. McWhirter and Andrew M. Madison, The Male Couple, How Relationships Develop, a serious sociological study about the development of male couple relationships. The authors studied 156 couples whose relationships lasted from 1 to 37 years, leading to the general conclusion that male same-sex unions last longer than the public thinks they do. They discovered, however, that an explicit or implicit assumption that 75% of the couples had made before entering into a mutual agreement to live together turned out to be false. That assumption was that their union would be sexually exclusive. 5 years, all the couples had come to the conclusion that some outside sexual relationships had to be accepted for the survival of the relationship. These couples viewed emotional stability with each other as more important than sexual fidelity. The couples did not come to this conclusion easily, say the authors, because they had accepted the cultural bias that fidelity is necessary for a good marriage. But gradually the couples developed their own concept of fidelity, which is explained in these terms. It is only through time that the symbolic nature of sexual exclusivity translates into the real issues of faithfulness. When that happens, the substantive emotional stability of the partner, not sex, becomes the real measure of faithfulness. The authors find a partial explanation for the change in attitudes of the couples after a few years in the concept of limerence, which is being in love with the other person together with all the characteristics of this state, an emotional high in which all reality is seen in roseate colors. When the high wears off, relationships often crumble, or at least the other partner becomes less attractive, and other men become more attractive in fantasy and in reality. As I understand the author's data, when a couple's union seems in jeopardy, they resort to a curious rationalization. Desiring to preserve the emotional bond between them despite the fact that either or both desire genital sex outside their union, they separate their friendship from their sexual needs, minimizing its sexual meaning as if it were purely an animal instinct when done outside the relationship, even agreeing to a third person in their sexual activity or to group sex at bathhouses. As long as neither partner becomes involved emotionally with another sex partner, they consider that their union will be preserved. The authors sum up this aspect. The couples in our study, and all of the couples together for more than 5 years, were not continuously sexually exclusive with each other. We found that gay men expect mutual emotional dependability with their partners, and that relationship fidelity transcends concerns about sexuality and exclusivity. It is important to understand that many of these couples consider sexual intercourse a form of recreation, not to be taken too seriously. As one partner put it, sex can be like a recreational sport and still maintain its specialness for us, between ourselves. Like McWhirter and Madison in The Male Couple, Mary Mendola reports that many homosexual and lesbian couples distinguish between sexual exclusivity and emotional exclusivity. In traditional thought, sexual and emotional exclusivity are necessary elements of fidelity between husband and wife. But many gay and lesbian couples permit occasional affairs with a third party, provided that nothing more is sought than strictly sexual satisfaction, or, in other words, as long as the partner does not become emotionally involved with the sex partner. Conclusion. The secular studies of same-sex unions, no less than the major religious studies reviewed in this chapter, indicate that, at the heart of the homosexual condition is a deep loneliness, the natural human hunger for mutual love, a search for identity, and a longing for completeness. The origins of homosexual attractions and behaviors. The most common conflicts at different life stages that predispose individuals to homosexual attractions and behavior are loneliness and sadness, mistrust and fear, profound feelings of inadequacy, and a lack of self-acceptance, narcissism, excessive anger, sexual abuse in childhood, and a lack of balance in one's life coupled with overwhelming feelings of responsibility. During times of stress, these inner difficulties are activated. In an attempt to seek relief or to escape from this unconscious emotional pain, strong sexual temptations and behavior can occur. This dynamic of inner emotional homosexual desires and activity rarely can begin during childhood, but usually it develops in early adolescence. However, adult life may be the first time for the emergence of this disorder. In regard to the success of psychotherapy in treating homosexuality, in 1962 Bieber reported a cure rate from psychoanalysis of 27%. A recent survey of 285 psychoanalysts who had treated 1,215 homosexual patients revealed that 23% of their patients changed to heterosexuality. When forgiveness and Christian spirituality are essential parts of the treatment, it has been my clinical experience that the recovery rate from the emotional pain and subsequent homosexual behavior approaches 100% in those who are truly committed to the process.